The Trump administration continues its total government overhaul with new proposed budget cuts. On Monday, news broke that the White House Office of Management and Budget has proposed a sweeping budget cut to save upwards of $30 billion in the next fiscal year. The proposal includes cutting the State Department's budget by half and eliminating funding for their international organizations such as NATO and the United Nations. Also, public broadcasting as a part of the proposals that they are putting forward. In rescissions, they're going to be taking back some money. So, what does this mean going forward? How serious is this administration about cutting spending and returning money to the taxpayers? Well, joining me now to talk about this is Arkansas Senator John Boozman. He serves on 5 Senate committees, including he's the chair of the Agriculture Committee. Senator Boozman, welcome back to Washington Watch. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, as always, for having me.
All right, before we get into the budget, because you're also on the Appropriations Committee, so you know a lot about the budget, I want to start with the confirmation of former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee, someone you know quite well. But you helped shepherd his nomination as U.S. Ambassador to Israel through the process. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, I did introduce him along with Senator Cotton. And after it was over, Ted Cruz told me that was the difference, that my introduction was so good that he decided to vote for him. But I think we probably would have had Ted regardless, in the sense that they're dear friends and a great supporter of the governor. But no, it was really a good hearing. Mike Huckabee does such a good job communicating, and just shared his love for Israel, shared his knowledge of the Israeli history and the Israeli people, how much he's been involved in there in the past. And I think he is an outstanding choice and will do a great job for the United States of America, representing our interest in that part of the world.
Yeah, I'm excited about his nomination. In fact, was communicating with him when the Senate floor vote took place, and his confirmation was made official, and look forward to actually seeing him later this month over in Israel. So let's move on.
I'm sure he'll be excited about that.
Let's talk a little bit about budget. The administration proposing, this is not something we see very often. Generally, we see administrations growing budgets. Here we have the Trump administration cutting back. Talk about those cutbacks.
Well, it's important. We simply have to cut back. We're in a situation now where we're $37 trillion in debt and running $2 trillion deficits every year. Interest being so great that it exceeds our spending on national defense. That's just, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that just doesn't work. It doesn't work in our households. It doesn't work in government. It doesn't work in business. So you do have to cut back. And so I've got a lot of faith in Marco Rubio at the State Department. He's a good friend and did a great job as a senator. I know he's going to do a great job as Secretary of the State. So we'll be listening to him. Some of the programs I'm concerned about, I think there were several programs that President Bush initiated when he was in office that really have made a lot of difference. They've saved a lot of lives overseas. And so we'll be looking at those and making sure that the cuts are surgical, and that we are getting rid of the garbage. And there is a lot of stuff in there that doesn't belong in there, has no business, and we won't miss a bit. It's a waste of money. On the other hand, there are some important programs that we want to make sure that we go forward with, in some cases even increase.
When you look at what the Biden administration did, and of course they're not alone in this, but using taxpayer dollars to advance their own kind of leftist agenda, attaching foreign aid dollars to countries changing their policies that are in alignment with the left's ideology, that has to stop, and I think that's a part of what the Trump administration is going after.
Very much so, and so much of these dollars were pumped out, a lot of it even after the election was over, between the election and the Trump inauguration, to NGOs, favorite people, favorite entities that they had, that, as you just alluded to, were really trying to move people in a direction that we're not in the best interest of our country. I don't think we're in the best interest of their countries either. But no, this stuff has to stop, and that's easy. We can get rid of that stuff in a minute, and nobody's going to miss it. And so we need to do that. And I commend Marco and the president for doing that, and we'll certainly be supportive of those programs being eliminated.
Senator Boozman, speaking of values and money, I want to shift topics or gears a little bit. Move to Title IX violations in higher learning institutions, colleges that have basically trampled upon the definition of woman, female, and as a result, female sports. The Trump administration, day one, saying, hey, there's two genders, male and female, and they've been using their executive order ability to bring states, to bring institutions of higher learning in line. This crosses over into your territory as chairman of the Agriculture Committee to a degree, with what we saw recently in the University of Maine, where the agricultural grants that fund that institution in part are being withheld. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, the Education Department in the past has used money, used various grants in order to push their agenda. And that might be with, various programs that, again, you and I would have a great deal of problem. Most of our listeners would have a great deal of problem with. They were able to do that because when you take the government's money, then you're beholden to the government. And so because of that, President Trump has the ability to do this. And so right now the policies are such that they're not in line with the federal policy. And because of that, then he has the ability and the right in order to withhold funds. I'm very much a believer that boys should not be playing in female sports, and it doesn't. We could discuss that for a little bit, but it doesn't take a genius to understand why. Physically, they just can't compete, and you're seeing these records being shattered by males. And
right.
And again, the good thing is that females are starting now to stand up and say, no, we're not going to be a part of this, and more schools on their own. And anything the federal government can do to prevent that from happening, I'm all for.
All right, Senator, we'll leave it there. Thanks for joining us.